Today we're going to take a closer look at my favorite market, the semiconductor industry. Unfortunately, I wish I was coming with some good news, but I want to say it's a little bit of the opposite. There are some acts to kind of help the manufacturing side here in the United States, but unfortunately there are certain semiconductor companies that believe this is going to create an unfair advantage to a company like Intel. Let's find out more on today's episode. If this is your first time here, make sure to hit the thumbs up. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, check out the pinned comment for a lot of great links, my free Discord channel, and also my tech channel. So let's get started.
I do want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and make sure to check out fool.com/Jose to get the top 10 stocks to buy right now.
So one of the main companies we are going to take a closer look at today is going to be Intel. We can see this is stock from its 52-week high is down roughly 31%. So we're also going to take a closer look at some semiconductor design companies. We have Nvidia that is down roughly 51% from its 52-week high, and AMD, which is down roughly 49.7% from its 52-week high. So I mentioned there is two types of companies we are going to discuss. First, there are manufacturing companies. These are companies that pretty much manufacture chips. Then you have design companies. These are the companies that design form of chips that then get sent out to the manufacturing side. Like I mentioned, some design companies are AMD and Intel. Some manufacturing companies are TSM. There are very limited amount of companies that actually do both. And one of the biggest ones is Intel, which does both manufacturing and semiconductor design. So first, let's take a quick backtrack and see the two kind of acts floating around the United States. First is the CHIPS Act, which is going to create federal incentives to promote semiconductor manufacturing and increase investments in semiconductors here in the United States. This is roughly a $52 billion act that will kind of give subsidies to companies that are bringing chip manufacturing here in the United States. And remember, I said chip manufacturing. The second is a FABS Act. The current version of the FABS Act right now establishes a tax credit for investments in constructing, expanding, and upgrading semiconductor manufacturing facilities and equipments in the United States. So the other act is also one that very similar would create some form of incentives. This would be a form of tax credit for companies manufacturing here in the United States. There is a revised version floating around the house right now that includes also a credit for semiconductor design. Outside of Intel, there is also companies like Texas Instrument and Micron Technology that both design and manufacture their own chips. These are three companies that would benefit highly from the CHIPS Act, which deals with manufacturing, and also the FABS Act, as they would get investment tax credits for investing in equipment, expansions, and so on, again in the manufacturing side. Then, like I mentioned, you have design companies like AMD and Nvidia that do design their own chips, but unfortunately they don't manufacture. They offload that process to other companies. So the design companies at the moment will get no real direct benefit from subsidies of building plants because they have none. The only main act right now that would benefit is the revised version of the FABS Act, which I talked about earlier, that does contain both manufacturing tax credit and tax credit for chip design activities. And I do believe that here in the United States, we need to bring more chip design, and I think that's very, very important. But I believe we should also not forget about the kind of design companies. And let me just talk about where the unfair advantage comes from. Let's say a company like AMD and Nvidia, they have a balance sheet, right? And they use this balance sheet to kind of focus on their research and development. For example, a company like Intel that does both manufacturing and design will get a nice amount of tax credits, of incentives, of subsidies to kind of create and expand their manufacturing side. Now, because they're getting all these forms of subsidies and forms of tax credits, now they're able to use whatever cash they have in their balance sheet. They don't need to invest it all in manufacturing anymore since they're saving a lot of money. Now that extra money that they saved, they can now use it to accelerate their research and development. And this is where the unfair advantage comes, where these kind of US tax dollars will help Intel also kind of boost their research and development process, where it's not really helping out AMD or Nvidia. So let me just say I am both an investor of AMD and Nvidia, and I'm not an investor of Intel. I do believe Intel has the potential to be a great investment in the semiconductor market, and if done correctly, I do believe they can turn the ship around that has kind of been failing the past few years. Their 12th generation CPU continues to get strong praise in the market where I see, and the 13th generation, there are leaks that this 13th generation CPU is also looking pretty strong. So if these acts do pass, I do believe Intel can benefit pretty strongly. If these acts do pass, I do believe my design companies might have more competition on their side, but at the same time, I do believe in the long-term thesis of AMD and Nvidia. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think these acts are creating an unfair advantage of Intel? If they are they changing your overall thesis in the semiconductor market? Like I mentioned, for me, no real thesis changes, but we can definitely see that a company can benefit a little bit more than others. So take care, have a good day, and see you next time.